Okay, welcome back to the garage. So, among the things that we're going to work on this week is the 360 LA engine for my friend Mark's 1968 Dodge Dart. So we are ready to essentially complete the short block assembly, and that's what we're going to work on doing. After trying numerous sets of used pistons, I eventually gave up, and I broke down and bought a brand new set of pistons they're essentially stock. They are a direct replacement for what came out of this engine. And this is what they look like assembled. Like I said, they're a direct stock replacement. And of course, these are our original rods, which have been shot peened, have had ARP hardware installed, and then they've been resized. So I took these and I had to assemble myself because they are press fit wrist pins, right? So they're not a floating wrist pin. So I'll insert the pictures of how I did that, but essentially what you have to do is you preheat the rods evenly, which means you need a industrial sized oven or a very forgiving spouse. And then once you have them hot enough, you take your pins, which if you freeze them is another thing that'll help you a lot, because that'll shrink them and expand these rods. And then you can set up sort of a jig, which they're exactly the same diameter as a 5/8 socket, and you can put it all together. Okay, so we're going to put the pistons together here. So I've already done the one bank of the engine, but I figured I'd at least show you one bank here. So I got my caps off, and what we're going to do is we're going to put the rings on first. So with the sealed power rings, which is what we're using, you'll see the bags are labeled. Third groove, top groove, second groove. So of course second groove's compression. So that's pretty self-explanatory. And we've got all our new connecting rod bearings and our caps. So you got the ARP assembly lube, which you need to put on prior to assembling and torquing your fasteners. So let's go ahead and put them together. Enough talk. Okay, we'll start with our first piston. Take our oil expander ring and we'll put it on. What I usually do is I take the seam, which you can see is right here, and I will bring it basically over the wrist pin. And we'll take not three, of the oil ring rails. And we'll just take them and you kind of just walk them in gently. You don't want to bend them, nor do you want to scratch your new pistons. Just going to set them in like that. And what I usually do with them is I take them and I offset them. So one, we will go ahead and put right here towards the skirt, and our other one we'll put opposite, so it'll be against this skirt here. If I'm blocking your view, I do apologize. I'm only going to show you one of these anyway. If you can put one together, you can put the other 7 together. So there's our other split right here. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to put our number 2 ring on, and you will need ring expanders. Grab a number 2 ring. What you're going to watch for is usually your number 2 ring says on it top. So that faces towards the deck of the engine. And take it, expand it so it goes up and over. And then you can release your tension. And what I usually do is I position it again over by our skirt. So your opening is going to be over here where you have skirt material, not where it's open where your wrist pin is. Just so compression does come past the ring, you still have something blocking it from getting down to the pan. At least that's the way I was taught. Everybody's taught different. And then we'll take our top number 1 ring and we'll do the same thing with it, and we'll just put it so it's opposite that one. And that is our rings assembled. Next thing we're going to do is we will take and put our bearing shells in. You're going to make sure it's dry in here. You do not want oil on the backing of the bearing shell. Now, the reason for that is it has the potential to spin if it's lubricated on the backing. Now, I realize that the likelihood of that is very low, but it's still possible. And this piston is number 6. So we will find our number 6 cap, which these are all numbered because I took them out and stamped them, which you'll find in one of the early videos of this. Okay, so this one is number 6. So go ahead and we'll put this bearing shell in here. Line up your groove. Just gently push it into place. Make sure it's all the way seated and that it's clean for now. Next thing we'll do is we'll take and we'll put our ARP lube onto our studs. This ensures that we get the correct torque on them, because the torque for an ARP bolt is not the same as it is for the same bolt in the factory. Okay, with that done, the next thing we're going to do is lubricate everything. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a bit of assembly lube here, put it on my bearing face, make sure it's good and evenly coated. And I'm going to do the same thing with this one. Okay, now we're going to soak our pistons. Well, not soak, dunk our pistons. Okay, so what this is just a bucket of the same, basically break-in oil that I'm going to be using in this engine. So I'm just going to take my piston and submerge it. And because we've lost a little bit of oil here, top that up. And we'll let it sit for a couple minutes while we put the others together, and then I'll show you the next step. Okay, we're ready to start putting our pistons in. So we'll start with number 2, and we'll work our way to the back. So everybody's got their own way, and like I keep saying, I can only show you how I do things. So you'll notice I've put pieces of hose on the ends here to keep from scratching our crankshaft. And you'll notice I have my extension in here. And you'll see why in 2 seconds. Because now it'll sit there like that until we get our rings set where we want them. Which our bottom ring is pretty good. This one here, and this one here. Now we're ready for our compressor. Okay, we'll come over here with our ring compressor, and I'll just set my half of it there, We'll go up and over our rings, like so. And make sure they're still kind of lined up. The other half here. What we're going to do now is, once our ring's compressed, pull our extension out. I'll be able to slide it in like that. I usually use a hammer, it's just it's over on the bench and I just wasn't feeling like going to grab it. Okay, so with our engine flipped up, we're going to take off our pieces of hose. And now we can take our cap and we're going to install it. Okay, put our nuts on. And then we're going to slowly snug it up until we're ready to torque it to 50 foot-pounds according to the ARP hardware paperwork. So we have my torque wrench here, which is already set. Grab the socket that I just dropped. So we will just take and tighten these up. Then I could grab the speed handle out of my box if I really wanted to. Okay. Oop. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my ratchet, and this is an engine barring tool, meant for Dodges actually. Now what we can do is, I usually go a full 360 degrees just to make sure everything sounds good, nothing's binding. Now we've done that, I'll roll it up so this journal is at the top again, like that. And now we're ready to put number 4 in. Okay, so one of the last things I do after I get the connecting rods all in and torqued, I like to go back and I check every single nut. And I know that seems redundant, but I would much rather find out one of them is a little bit loose now than after we fire it up. Grab our bars. We'll bring these suckers up here. Okay, that's our bottom end together.